Hey everybody, today I am going to be reviewing Barbarian. This film was directed by Zach Cregger. Cregger is an actor and a writer and a producer, and he's done some directing, but he is known mainly for the comedy genre. So naturally, it makes this a very curious project to take on. And it's especially curious that he was so adamant about getting it made. It took him quite a while to get this off the ground, but you definitely can see that in the film. This film just has a really spirited joy to it. Sure, it is a horror film. Yes, it is sadistic and it's probing the deep corners of the mind, yada, yada, yada. But it just has a sense of joy to it. And, you know, it has that feeling of like a bunch of people around the campfire and somebody being like, come on guys, I have a great story to tell you. There is a childlike giddiness, but there's also this like, you know, drive that is definitely very adult in its energy. And I was pleasantly surprised by this film. When I talk about like a popcorn movie, I don't see very many of those these days, but this was very much the kind of thing where it's like, get yourself a big, you know, thing of popcorn and just enjoy. Because for me, the film hooks you right from the get-go, and this is made by somebody who definitely has an appreciation of horror films, but certainly, you know, an appreciation for the craft of making a horror film. When you want to make something that is a bit exaggerated and cinematic and engaging in all the right ways, I think horror is just a great genre to allow all kinds of directors to play up a lot of that cinematic manipulation. I always say horror is just like the perfect exercise that every director should attempt at least once in their life. This is what I like to call very much like bare bones horror, because it sounds like somebody telling a story, but they're making it up as they go along with it. They start with a concept, they just take it and run with it, but they're using a lot of creativity there. It is a very skeletal type of experience because, like I said, bare bones. It is cutting very much to the core of, I think, what scares us and kind of the dark, as I said, the dark corners of the mind, but just on kind of broad levels. And we're just kind of carving out a little piece here that's fun. It's part meta commentary and it's part social commentary, but it's very much like Psycho in its structure, where it's following one character and then it abruptly stops, and then you're suddenly following somebody else entirely, and that's really difficult to do, you know, just as a storyteller. But with this one, as I mentioned, it feels like kind of like a very outlandish white lie, and it gets, you know, crazier and crazier as it goes. And there's something very fun about it where it's like, wait, I just want to see where this goes, even if it makes no sense. There's something very delicious about it. It reminds me very much of like the feeling I had watching like the Bruce Willis storyline, the Gold Watch storyline that is in Pulp Fiction, you know, where it's just kind of, it's winding and swerving and sometimes it's taking very sharp turns and you really don't expect it. You don't know what is going to happen with that story. You have no idea how it's going to end. At times it's very disturbing, at other times it's very tense. And I always saw that as Bruce kind of taking this weird museum tour of kind of the uglier sides of society, and we're kind of slowly going deeper and deeper and deeper into the id, where a lot of the dark, very primal, very, you know, uncomfortable things happen in the imagination. What I'm trying to say is you want to be surprised. This is the type of film you absolutely want to go in not knowing very much. Sure, watch the trailer for it, that's fine, but if you haven't seen the film, please stop watching this review and come back after you have seen it. But yes, it is a very simple premise. A girl rents an Airbnb, she comes in on a very rainy night, again, very much like Psycho. She gets there and it turns out somebody else already has the house. Somebody else is renting it at the same time. So there's obviously some sort of mistake. They need to sort it out, but it's very likely a simple confusion. But yeah, that's it. That is the setup. And obviously it could go anywhere. Obviously we have a sense of where it is going to go. We sense very early on that this is going to be horror, but it has the vibes of like a romantic comedy. You can sense that there could be some humor here. Maybe it's a mystery thriller. You know, we have our male here that's in the house, Keith, and he's naturally luring us in with this very kind of interesting energy. He's awkward, but also kind of charming. It's that Norman Bates kind of feeling of him like, hey, you want this milk and this sandwich I made for you? Kind of creepy, but also a bit endearing. So these are the questions kind of buzzing around. It's like, is this guy the villain, or is there some sort of bigger, you know, antagonistic force at the center of things? Even when the film decides to completely go in a different direction and it starts going on this whole rant here before coming back again to the center, it's like you instantly are interested in that character. You instantly want to follow them, and they are likable. But in that respect, it kind of reminded me of Audition by Takeshi Miike, which, as many people know, that is one of my favorite horror films of all time. And, you know, with that one, it's juggling all kinds of different possibilities. It's kind of trying out different genres or the possibility of them before kind of arriving at what it really is meant to be. But another reason to bring out Audition in similarities is because I think with that film and with this film, Barbarian, it's giving us two different points of view. And there is just over overall a big connection between the masculine and the feminine in terms of the metaphors going on here. The first section obviously is the girl's storyline. It's Tess. And yes, it's very much trying to get you to feel what it's like to be in the mind of a female, because obviously as a woman, you're just naturally smaller. You're more diminutive than the men around you. And so naturally, you do have to be a lot more alert. You're alone with a stranger you don't know, so naturally, it's adding all those little details of like she's keeping her phone near her, she's locking doors, all that kind of stuff. But then when we get, the next point of view in the next section of the film, with Justin Long, who I just adore, I love him. I was so happy to see that he was in this movie. But yeah, I mean, he's obviously supposed to be a very likable presence, but he is seeing things through the eyes of a male. He's this kind of big shot Hollywood actor, and he's about to potentially lose his entire career due to a rape allegation. And he denies the rape constantly at the beginning of his story, and then little by little, some alcohol is involved, and he reveals that maybe it was a little bit more complicated than that. I love that they have made this guy somebody who is a little bit brash and certainly somebody who is very flawed, but I don't see him necessarily as the worst guy in the world. He's just very foolish. Maybe he's not the most open-minded, but he's just a normal person. He makes his mistakes. And I like that about this guy. I wish they had made him maybe a little bit more in that direction. I think it would have been more interesting if he had been less repugnant morally, because that would have made our sympathy as an audience way more intriguing. And then I think that would have added a whole new layer that this film could have used in the third act, I think. Obviously, both the female and the male character discover the hidden door in the basement, and I honestly, one of my favorite parts of the whole movie is just watching how tonally different they are. Obviously, when she's looking at it, because there's that kind of feminine energy, she's very alert and she's very, very scared. And yes, I think everybody, male or female, would be scared in that situation. But again, this is very much a subconscious thing. I'm not taking it literally. It's just, it's a metaphor for just the idea of danger. And so naturally she's going to be a little bit more afraid of that, more anxious, whereas he just goes right through it and he's not really thinking about anything. He's not having to be alert. And it was very funny. Justin Long is just, he's such a great actor. He pulls it off so well. That dichotomy was fantastic. And then there is the final piece of the puzzle, which is, obviously the backstory of the actual owner of the house and the true mastermind behind the whole thing. And obviously, it is connecting the Justin Long character and himself. And I don't know, I wish maybe that it hadn't been so black and white, that it wasn't so, oh, we aren't so different, you and I, that sort of metaphor. It just felt a little bit on the nose, a little bit too overwrought, in my opinion. But yeah, obviously there has to be that connection between the two characters. Obviously, he is making a mistake, but not Jack the Ripper. But then you have kind of actual Jack the Ripper in a sense. You have extreme sadism, extreme cruelty. You are in the bowels of your subconscious and you are facing your ego, or you're facing what you could become, because we all have that capability within us as humans. And so that's allowing him to broaden his perspective and perhaps change his ways, or attempt to. And I like our female heroine here, Tess, just because she's a really nice blank slate for us as the audience to project ourselves onto. She has something that is kind of dignified about her, a little bit modest. And there's something where she kind of demands your respect, I think, as an audience member. And she has that independence, that strength. And I think she's representing this pure central force of femininity that is navigating the seven circles of hell. And that skeletal nature of the narrative allows just that whole section of exploring the basement to feel very much like this gaping construct where you can project all kinds of things onto it. And because of that skeletal nature, it can't really indulge too much in one direction. So I appreciated that a lot about it. So it's just basically using a lot of horror cliches we've seen before, but again, spinning them around in a new way and examining the meta aspects. Obviously, like I said, you've got the Justin Long character and he's having to question his morals, whether or not he's a good person. And then the lady over here is having to overcome that fear she has of that dominant force, that male dominant force. And that fly by the seat of your pants energy can only work so far, because once you get into the third act, you do kind of need to allow all of these things to sort of sink in a way that is impactful. And he's not quite doing that here. There is a very distinct world that Krieger has built here for our characters. And yet there is maybe a lack of intent and maybe a lack of firmness within the parameters of that world when it comes to the logic. So even though certain things are given to us, Other things were like, well, wait, how did such and such happen? How did we get from A to B? Whatever happened to that? And there's something about, certain revelations as well that do feel a little bit anticlimactic considering the buildup. And once we get into that mind of the serial killer a la Silence of the Lambs, it just kind of, it didn't feel like it was sticking the landing. It didn't feel meaty in terms of just the momentum that was building to that point. It's not really finding that mirror, that connection between the male characters, I think, in a way that could have been a very compelling and emotionally resonant finale. I just think it needs to be grounded in something a little bit more firm, a little bit more solid, but the intrigue is absolutely there for sure. I would love to see another movie made by this guy. But yeah, this is such an easy recommendation for me. Absolutely see this movie. It is a lot of fun, and see it maybe on Halloween if you can. But that is the video. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'm going to plug my website as always. It is deepfocuslens.com. I'm an artist. I do commission portraits, and I also sell prints of my work. If that is something that you're interested in, you can always go to the website below. And if you have a question about a commission or a print, you can always email me. My email is in the description box below as well. Also, I'd like to give a shout out to my patrons who are wonderful guys. Thank you so much for your support. If you are interested in supporting, the link for that is below, as well as the rest of my social media information. You can watch more videos here, and you can subscribe if you'd like. Catch you next time.